The Biden administration released its 2022 national security strategy. It names China and climate change as the world's largest threats. But Biden wants to compete responsibly and cooperate with China. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. U.S. President Joe Biden has had a lot of things happen during his presidency. He's had to deal with a pandemic, inflation, supply chain crises, high gas prices, a border crisis, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, aggressive Chinese expansion, and the septum nose piercing coming back in style. Seriously, why is everyone getting these now? Is it because the economy is so bad people are trying to manifest a bull market by looking like one? Anyway, when you're dealing with all this and more, you need a strategy. And not to worry, Biden's got one. He even wrote it down for us. Last week, the Biden administration finally published its national security strategy. It builds on the interim strategy he released shortly after his inauguration last year. It was due to be released in the spring, but it was delayed by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Blaming Russia for delays in getting work done is the best excuse since my dog ate my homework. The national security strategy is important because it basically tells the world what the Biden administration thinks is important and what they're going to do about it. This one marks the end of an era defined by U.S. military involvement in Iraq and Afghanistan, which was done in the most spectacularly botched way possible. Not only was it a foreign policy mess, but also terrible for the environment, with the number of trees the Taliban cut down to make thank you cards for Biden. Biden's new national security strategy now focuses on two things: military threats from great powers and global challenges, especially climate change. It frames Russia and China as threats to the U.S., but in different ways. Russia poses an immediate threat to the free and open international system, as its brutal war of aggression against Ukraine has shown. But Biden's national security strategy recognizes that the People's Republic of China presents America's most consequential geopolitical challenge. In this, it actually agrees with the Trump administration. It's fully aware that China wants to dominate the Indo-Pacific and the rest of the world. I guess they've been watching China Uncensored. It also points out that China uses technology and international institutions to export authoritarianism, as well as economic power to coerce countries. They're using their wealth to make people dependent on them, like a rich stepdad that says it's my way or one of our poorly constructed highways. In response to China and global threats like climate change, Biden's strategy outlines three main actions: strengthening the U.S. economy, infrastructure, and key technologies, building up the strongest possible coalition of nations to solve global challenges, and modernizing the U.S. military to contend with Russia and China. Some applauded Biden's national security strategy as a solid application of U.S. grand strategy to advance a rules-based international order that favors democracy. And it made the Chinese Communist Party angry, which is always a sign you're on the right track. Chinese officials, as usual, accused the U.S. of having an outdated Cold War-era confrontational mentality and threatening to lead the world down a dangerous abyss, which is pretty much the very thing China has been doing with its illegal fishing, human rights abuses, erosion of regional autonomy, massive pollution, and cover-up of the COVID pandemic, to name a few. They're basically that Eric Andre meme at this point. Biden's national security strategy recognizes all this, but it's also a bit inconsistent. I'll tell you how after the break. Welcome back. Now, at first glance, it would seem the Biden administration is going tough on China. It identifies China as America's most consequential geopolitical challenge. But the Biden administration also wants to compete responsibly with China. So what does competing responsibly mean? Is it like drinking responsibly? So they're going to get totally blackout, sloppy competitive, but take an Uber home? No. According to the strategy, competing responsibly means reducing the risk of military escalation. It also means being willing to work with China wherever U.S. and Chinese interests align. Now, just the fact that it says this isn't the concerning part, because the Trump administration strategy said the same thing. Saying the U.S. is willing to cooperate is like saying, we're breaking up, but let's still be friends. The problem is that the Biden administration has a very specific thing they desperately want to cooperate with China on, like it might save the relationship. That's where climate change comes in. Biden's national security strategy really hammers on the idea that climate change is a serious issue. It says that of all the shared problems we face, climate change is the greatest and potentially existential for all nations, including, China. According to the strategy, we must work with other nations to address shared challenges to improve the lives of the American people and those of people around the world, starting with saving trees. So stop sending me so many thank you cards, Taliban. This is why Biden's national security strategy says the U.S. will engage constructively with China, because no country should withhold progress on issues like the climate crisis because of bilateral differences. It believes that it is possible for the United States and the PRC to coexist peacefully and share in and contribute to human progress together. Aw, that's sweet. Does the national security strategy also still believe in Santa Claus? Because China really seems concerned about stopping climate change. But this isn't just limited to climate change. The Biden administration also shares hope that it can cooperate with China on countering other global threats, like pandemics, illegal narcotics, and the global food crisis. According to U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, the Biden administration wants to avoid a new Cold War.
In this administration, the Biden administration, we believe we've come to a point where we can and simply have to tackle both on an equal plane: geopolitical competition and shared transnational challenges. So we are building a strategy fit for purpose for both competition we cannot ignore and global cooperation without which we cannot succeed. We will engage constructively with the PRC wherever we can, not as a favor, not in exchange for our principles, but because working together to solve common problems is what the world expects from responsible powers, and because it is in our interest.
Wow. I'm sure China is so moved by Sullivan's words. Expecting anything from China at this point is like expecting Bowser to not kidnap Princess Peach. I know he's done it 1,000 times before, but this time is different. Biden's eagerness to cooperate with China on things like climate change is one reason why he's trying to frame the U.S.'s goals as outcompeting China and constraining Russia. He's comfortable explicitly calling Russia profoundly dangerous, but not China. Biden's trying to appease different people with different perspectives, including those who believe that if we just extend a hand to China, that they'd be willing to cooperate. It's a delicate balancing act, which is scary because, well, yeah. Some criticize Biden for being too hard on China. The Brookings Institution, a left-leaning think tank, asks, how can we successfully address climate and pandemic disease while treating China as an adversary? The Biden team risks overdoing it in rhetoric, messaging, and diplomacy. Sure, the Chinese Communist Party considers itself at war with the U.S., but let's not treat them like an adversary. Brookings goes on to say, it adds insult to injury at a time when we cannot afford needless provocation of China. I'm glad to see that we have such influential institutions advising our leaders on how to not offend our authoritarian comrades. This would be like if before World War II, Neville Chamberlain's advisor said, don't make us stink about Poland. We don't want to needlessly provoke Hitler. Oh wait, they did. That worked out really well. Peace for our time. Assuming that authoritarians like the Chinese Communist Party will keep their word and care about the rest of humanity is honestly just stupid. Hoping the Chinese Communist Party will care about cooperating to address climate change and the environment, China keeps building coal plants after vowing not to. And Chinese fishing fleets are destroying entire ecosystems. Hoping the Chinese Communist Party will care about pandemics? They hoarded medical supplies and exploited COVID to advance their own interests. Hoping the Chinese Communist Party will care about narcotics and international crime. China's been in bed with organized crime. It launders drug money. and refuses to cooperate with other countries' law enforcement. And caring about global food security? Not a chance. Want to end the fad of septum piercings? Most of those nose rings are probably made in China. People who think China is willing to cooperate assume that the Chinese Communist Party thinks like the US or other liberal democracies. That's not how the game goes. Authoritarian regimes do what's best for them. Period. That's the thing with authoritarians. They're not nice guys. I know, shocking. The same could be said about Russia. Even Biden's national security strategy admitted that U.S. efforts to reach out to Russia and find cooperation were spurned. With all this evidence, what makes people think China, which has a lot more influence in the world, would be willing to set aside politics to cooperate? The Biden administration is well aware that there's a contradiction in its dual competition/cooperation policy, or as they put it, there are tensions. I get that the U.S. government is trying to look as non-confrontational as possible, but encouraging people to believe that authoritarians are willing to cooperate is just setting up people to fall for lies over and over. That's no strategy, because not even authoritarians trust authoritarians. These magicians all know each other's tricks, specifically making people disappear. So what do you think? Leave your comments below. And be sure to support America Uncovered by going to patreon.com/America Uncovered. Contribute $1 or more per episode. We rely on your support to help us keep making great episodes. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.